everybody. We're just letting everyone in at the moment. Welcome to everyone. Just got a little bit of onboarding to do first of all, which one of my colleagues is also going to pop into the chat. Do feel able to use that chat if you can to introduce yourselves and say hello. Just some technical introductions. For those of you seeking captions, if you could please use the CC button below for embedded captions, or use the link in the chat for captions on a separate screen. Huge thanks to Claire Hill, who is supporting us there. For those of you using BSL, our BSL interpreters today are Amy Cheskin and Max Markovich. Thanks, Amy and Max. If you would like multi-pin enabled, please let us know in the chat. We also have Alistair Gentry, who is live tweeting the event over at Unlimited's Twitter at WeAreUNLTD. We'll pop that link in the chat too. And Roberto Sitter, who will be producing visual minutes, which will be available after the event. Thank you, Roberto. For audio description, speakers will be asked to provide a brief one-line description of themselves and any visual content that they will be sharing. And as I say, for the moment, please do make use of the chat for any questions that you might have throughout the day. We'll have regular portions for Q&As with each speaker. I was going to say you can use your camera if you'd like to speak as well. Please keep your cameras and mics off until those Q&A portions. And yeah, I suppose only put your camera on and speak if you are happy to be included in the recording of today's event too. As I say, there will be an opportunity to ask questions after each speaker. If you could please put those questions in the chat. And of course, thank you to those of you who provided questions in advance. Of course, yeah, just to clarify, if you are signing, please feel free to put your camera on to ask a question. And I've got confirmation here that actually won't be captured in the recording due to the view that we're using today. Apologies for any confusion. We're just going to take 60 seconds to allow everyone to arrive. And as I say, my colleagues will have put that technical information in the chat as well, for those of you for whom that's useful. We're just going to take 30 seconds. I think we've got the last few people coming in, which is great to see. Thank you, everyone. Here we go. Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to this session. My name is Rob Lindsay and I'm head of programs at The Space. I'm a man in my early 40s. I'm white with dark curly hair and a dark blue jumper because it's freezing in my house. I'll briefly introduce The Space. We're a digital agency originally set up by Arts Council England and the BBC to support the arts, cultural and creative communities to create digital work and connect it with the online audiences that it deserves. Our role in Culture in Quarantine 2 commissioning process was we were involved in the assessment and also in production support. Those of you who attended last week's webinar will have already seen or heard us talk about the commissioning process. And today we're going to talk about production and publication of work. specifically short form online content. And it's worth defining short form content, really. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a particular length. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a particular file size. It means material that's going out into the world, representing you and the work that you do, and often building an ongoing relationship with an audience or a community. It's worth acknowledging right from the start that there is no single approach to success with content. You and your work are unique, so maybe your audiences. Equally, there may be types of content that you simply enjoy making more than others. There may be social platforms that you enjoy spending time on more than others. Hopefully this webinar will help you to distinguish, though, between activity that can help you establish genuinely valuable audience interactions and activity that may simply be a chore or a distraction. We're looking for the activity that is going to help build your audiences, build your community, improve your visibility and your traction without it becoming a chore. As shown on the slide at the start of today, you're going to hear 3 speakers today, and each of them is going to talk from a slightly different perspective. First of all, Amrit Singh will talk through some of the platforms available to you, the sort of content that works on each one, particularly social video. In addition, Amrit will be able to offer tips for standing out among the crowd and really making the most of what you've got, making the most of what is unique about yourself and your story and the media or the story that may be available to you. Then, after a short screen break, we're going to hear from Mark Stedman, who will be talking specifically about audio materials, the specific opportunities and the specific challenges around audio. Then finally, we'll hear from Angie Mcfarland. Angie is a digital marketing specialist who helps brands and organizations to connect their messages to the audiences, again, the audiences that they deserve. As we've said, there'll be a chance to ask questions after each speaker. And again, I'll be putting to them some of the questions that you've already provided to us in advance as well. I really hope that you find today to be useful. As I say, there is no singular approach to content. There is no off-the-shelf recipe for success. It is about recognizing what is unique about yourselves, about your art, and recognizing the appetites of your audience as well. And hopefully today will illustrate that and give you some really useful, practical takeaways as well. Without further ado, because I know we've got a lot of material to get through today, and I know there's a fantastic amount of insight available from today's speakers. So without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to our first speaker, if that's okay. As I say, Amrit Singh is an associate of the space, a member of our mentoring roster, and in addition is a consultant and specialist who has helped organizations, teams, individuals of all levels of experience and resource. We've asked Amrit to talk, as I say, about short form content and specifically video. So Amrit, if I could say thank you for joining us, and if I could hand over to you to describe yourself to us and to share with us your thoughts. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Rob. Hello, everyone. So my name is Amrit Singh. I'm the creative director at Rebel Creatives, specializing in short form content production and strategy. I'm also an artist, content creator, and mentor. So I'm a Sikh man who wears a blue turban, has a pretty epic beard, if I should say so myself, wearing a, I don't know, a maroon top and of Indian descent. And I go by he and him pronouns. I'm going to drop my handles into the chat. Feel free to tag me, tweet at me, or ask me a question during this chat, and I will get back to you at the end of today. So, short form video. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what to do before creating short form video. And there's 5 questions that I want you to ask yourselves before you do that. So the first one is, does your video idea work from 6 seconds in byte, because Vine/byte is back, to 5 minutes, or expanded to long form video, or anywhere in between? Secondly, will it be a timely standalone statement piece, or an ongoing serialized drama, or a series of videos? And can it thrive in virtually any content platform? So for example, your website, blog, emails, social media, or inside a presentation and a webinar. Is it better suited to be consumed purely on desktop or on mobile environments? And if so, why? And finally, can it be repackaged, repurposed, and republished in conjunction with other relevant content? So those are the 5 questions that is really important to ask before you create any short form video, because it will help when creating a little bit of a strategy down the line. Now, one of the biggest questions I get asked is, what type of content can I produce? What's the most popular type of short form content? So the most popular at the moment is, number 1, a day in the life of. People on social media love to see what you do for a living, how you get to work, how you prepare for a meeting, what does your production look like, what does the prep look like on stage. So recording bits of 3-second video and putting it together into a short video is a fantastic way of getting people on board and part of your presence on social media. The second is asking questions or asking for feedback. Your social media audience is a brilliant focus group who follow you for a reason. So if you have a product or a launch or an event and you want some advice or to ask a question, then this is a brilliant time to do that. Another way is sharing information, factual stuff, educational content. People love to learn how to do something. And in fact, the most popular type of content on TikTok is a, did you know? Did you know X happened here? What, crazy? But it's great. You know, those type of videos are really, really good. So think, what kind of did you knows can you do in a short video? A time lapse is a brilliant way. So showing people how something was created. And people love seeing a 30-second time lapse of you spinning around really, really fast and doing something which took you days to do in 30 seconds. Behind the scenes. So we love behind the scenes. This is kind of the day in the life of, but also what does the work environment look like behind the company's brand? And also funny and trend videos. So it's really important to show a bit of a light-hearted side of you, if possible, if you want to, on social media. And what does that look like? And finally, a great way is celebration. Celebration, shout outs, highlighting a milestone. Now, we all love supporting one another. We should be. And every time someone does something great, we should celebrate it. And in fact, as the creative industry in the UK, we need to celebrate our successes a lot more often. So this is something I implore all of you guys to do, is to celebrate any milestones, any successes, any commissions you have on social media, and bring your audience part of the process with you. Okay, so those are the types of popular contents that we can produce videos. Next, I want to talk about the types of platforms. Okay, so there's a number of platforms which you can post on, and I want to break them down and make it kind of digestible. So the first one, where short form video is getting quite popular, is Facebook. Now, you might not think Facebook is a platform because they were reluctant for a long time to embrace short form. But even though the maximum video length on Facebook is 240 minutes, you should not post a video that long. Optimal video length on Facebook is between 15 seconds to 3 minutes, but they have stories. So Facebook stories, you can post something for 20 seconds, which is a really good amount. So I recommend utilizing the stories and playing around with video on Facebook stories. Secondly, we have Instagram, one of the most popular short form platforms. The maximum video length for them ranges from 15 seconds to 10 minutes on IGTV, but the optimal is between 30 to 60 seconds. Again, Instagram not only has reels, but it also has stories. So again, if you are creating content, it's also another brilliant way of sharing either a reel between 30 to 60 seconds or split up a video over a series of stories. Okay. Next, we have Twitter. Twitter is a fantastic way of sharing short form video. The reason why Twitter is actually getting really popular is because their copyright laws isn't as strict as Facebook and Instagram. So if you did have a music from TikTok or Instagram, for example, it won't get flagged on Twitter. But there was a study by Business to Community that found that videos that ran between 43 seconds and 45 seconds, I know just 2 seconds difference, were more likely to be featured by Twitter and had the highest engagement rate in its feed. That's a really interesting fact. And finally, we have TikTok. So TikTok have recently, in 2021, expanded their max video length from 60 seconds to longer, to 3 minutes. So the most popular time on TikTok is around 15 seconds still. So those are the most popular platforms. Another one I want to add to this is YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts is still new, still early on in its short form journey, where it's known for long form for a long time. However, you can produce a video which is 15 seconds, and it's becoming very, very popular on an established platform. So the top 3 platforms I recommend having a look at and experimenting with are Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. Okay, so you've kind of understood a little bit more about which platforms that you can post on. You know questions to ask yourself and the type of content to produce. Now let's talk about reusing content you've already got. Really important that we talk about sustainability. Now, sustainability is really important in content creation because we want to reshare and reuse all the hard work that we put into content that we've currently produced or previously produced. So creating evergreen content and repurposing content is something that we should have on our strategy, on our calendar, or thought process. So before you do, however, this is really important. Think about which videos you're about to share and if it's still relevant right now. Okay, is it out of date? Does it promote a show or an event that's no longer relevant? Does it talk about Brexit and everyone's gonna hate you? Okay, so be careful with what you share. Just because you did it a year ago doesn't mean it's going to be relevant today. However, there might be a ton of content that you've produced that is brilliant to share. And when you do reshare it, think about how you can reshare it with a brand new caption on different platforms, linking to the trends which are happening at that moment. For example, there are yearly trends that happen, mental health week, for example, refugee week. There might be certain videos that you produced which were brilliantly shot and put together that you could reshare for mental health week in another year with a different caption. So it's a really good way of thinking about or creating evergreen and sustainable content. A very easy way of understanding the type of content that you've got is by doing a content audit. It's very similar to a social media audit, is where you document everything that you've produced so far. And you pull it all together onto a drive or a hard drive or a shareable drive. And you go through it all and you look at, okay, what's good? What do we need to archive? And what can we reshare? So doing a content audit will help you plan for content in the future and right now. Okay, finally, how do we grab people's attention when creating short form content? Okay, so we know what type of topics, we know what platforms, we know about repurposing, but how do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them watching our video? There are a number of ways. Okay, so I'm going to run through a few with you. Number one, always start with a question. In your caption, you should always ask a question that's engaging, that will entice your viewers to comment on your videos. Now, most platforms are now really investing in the comment section on each platform, to a point where, for example, TikTok are allowing you to like comments, and the comment that has the most likes gets to gets to the top, and you can pin comments. So this is a really good way of getting your viewers excited about having their comment at the top of your list. Secondly, start a video with something exciting. Every time I'm creating a video, what I tend to do at the start is I tend to show the final product or final artwork for a split second at the start, just to create that excitement of what's to come. So if I'm doing a time lapse, for example, I would show the finished product in a really amazingly laid out way, and then go into the time lapse with some cool music and some really good editing. That's a really interesting way of keeping someone interested throughout the entire video, knowing that something like this is going to come about towards the end. Thirdly, change your perspectives. When you're editing videos, think about the different ways that you can film your footage. Every time you film just one angle, it gets a little bit boring. So think about how you can do top right, wide angle, close up, macros. Think about how you can use props, reflections, materials. These are really interesting ways of making a video look really interesting instead of just having one angle. Enhance your video with music. Music is a really important way of having engaged or increasing engagement on a video. Now, music is something that we can talk about a little bit more in depth at another time. However, just a quick run through, TikTok has its own videos, has its own music produced, which they've paid a lot of money to the top 10 and top 40 charts, for example. Instagram Reels have also done that. However, you can't use the music from TikTok on Facebook or Instagram because it will be flagged for copyright. So just be aware of copyright when you are producing music, and think about using open source music as well. And finally, end with an action. Every time I try to produce a video, I try to ask a question at the end, or ask my audience to do something. So like this video, comment on Twitter, sign up to my newsletter. What do you think? End with an action, and that will really help drive engagement. But remember, the most important thing to remember is be relatable and authentic. So with everything that I've just said to you, rip it up into a million pieces, but reapply it with your own uniqueness and start creating short form content today. That's me, Amrit Singh. I am done.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amrit. I really, really appreciate that. A lot of things to consider there, but at the same time, a lot of really practical ideas and practical applications, which is, yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
I've got some questions that have been sent in advance, and I know we've had a couple of comments in the chat as well that I just wanted to talk through. If I could please start with a question we had in advance. Someone asked, can you please recommend any good video and animation tools for social media?
Yes, brilliant. That's a great question. So the best video platform that I would recommend that is available on iOS and in Android is something called InShot, InShot. I've been using this platform for, I would say, 6 years now. And in fact, all of the videos I've produced on all of my platforms and the ones I've done for professionals have been done on that platform. It's a really good way of editing, adding music, transitions, effects, and it has a very good open source library. Other ones which I recommend are Adobe Spark, which is brilliant at producing short form content in general, whereas it's not just video, but also promotional items and stuff for social media. Another one is called Animaker. This is based for animation, by the way. Movely, and hopefully these will be put into the chat because it's sometimes difficult to say. Animoto is another one. Biteable, and the last one, iMovie, which has been available for a long time. So I would recommend just have a look at them, download the app, look at the website, see which feels best for you, which is intuitive to you, and just practice, just freestyle it.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Amrit. Also, as I'm aware, there's quite a lot of brand names for the benefits of our BSL interpreters. I'm just going to repeat those titles. That's fantastic. Thank you. So we've got InShot, we've got Adobe Spark, we've got Animaker, Animaker, Movely, I love these names. Movely, Moovly, Animoto, Biteable, and iMovie. And yeah, huge thanks to I can see you're doing it as well, Amrit, for popping in the chat as well, so people can check that out.
I'll throw in.
No, that's fantastic. I'm also going to add a little note we've had in the chat here as well from Mark, who will be speaking in a moment, who's also talked about music for projects, saying, I use elements.envato.com. That's elements.envato.com and audiojungle.net for finding music for projects too. The music is inexpensive and the licensing is reasonable. That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Mark. So yeah, some really, really practical suggestions there. That's fantastic. Huge thanks, Amrit. I really appreciate that. I've got another question here from someone. This came through in advance. This is someone who says, is it always right to follow trends on Instagram, especially with regards to short video content? Can I ask for your thoughts on that, please?
That's a good question. My answer would be yes and no. No, that is a tough question to know because it's very difficult to know what's trending on most platforms, especially Instagram. They are very secretive at telling you the algorithms or what's happening. It is easier with TikTok, for example. TikTok is the only platform that tell you the trends. And well, if you're here's a bit of a behind the scenes, by the way. If you're part of the content content agency, they will send you what's going to be trending a week before via email.
Wow.
And you're part of the WhatsApp group with all the top creatives in the UK. Some of them have got 6 million, 30 million followers, and there's me. But so that's a really good, if you are a professional content creator, you can request to be part of their content team. However, their trends are available for at least a week or 2 weeks. So it's a really interesting way of knowing what they are looking for. And if you do tick the certain boxes, which are use a trending hashtag, use a trending music, make sure it's relatable to the actual trend, they are very keen at promoting videos and putting them on the For You page, which is the main page. And they are, I know for a fact, openly looking for disabled artists, content from disabled artists. They're looking for artists from the UK because it's heavily attracted to American users. So they are constantly promoting people from the UK and from different ethnic groups as well. So yeah, have a look at the Discover page and just see what you can do on that side. But one thing which is really important, every platform is pushing short form video massively. So I recommend, especially with Reels, if you are producing content, try and put stuff on Reels. For example, with Instagram, it can be a bit confusing because you have IGTV, Reels, Stories, and you're like, well, what do I do? But if you focus a little bit on Reels, because they are pushing that quite a lot, you're more likely to get your video on their Discover page than if you were to do an IGTV, for example. So I would say look towards the trends and just put it towards that platform.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much, Amrit.
No worries.
I've got a couple more questions, if it's all right. I noticed that you mentioned at the start of your talk a platform called Byte, BYTE. This seems to be a platform that people are less familiar with. Certainly, it doesn't, I don't know if people are including it in their strategies yet. I'm not noticing the logo within people's social links or social profiles at the moment.
No.
Could I ask you to just tell us a little bit about what specifically Byte is for those that don't know, and obviously the creative opportunities that it offers?
Sure, yeah. So Byte was created by a guy called Dom Hoffman, who was the co-founder of Vine. He actually created it back in 2015. So he's been working on this for a while now. And Vine went bust in 2016, rest in peace, which was fantastic. But the problem that Vine had is that they didn't look after their creators. So they left. And what Byte has tried to do is bring back the 6-second Vine platform. Now, you are right, it is very new. Even though he's been working on it since 2015, he launched it last year. So it's still a very new platform. There are quite a few people using Byte. I have used it in probably 3 campaigns in the last year. However, it's something to look, to keep an eye on, I would say, because 6 seconds is not easy to produce, by the way, because I think we forget, since Vine went a good few years ago, we were so used to producing 30-second video content, which at that time we thought was difficult to go down from a 15-minute video to a 30-second, but going down from a 30-second to a 6-second,
yes.
Now that's a challenge. So what I recommend is, I think everyone should, just for fun, produce a 6-second video and make it actually relatable and understandable. Because if you can produce a very clever 6-second video that someone can understand the beginning, middle, and end, then actually creating a 30-second video or a 1 minute is pretty straightforward. So it's something to watch out for, I would say.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great advice. I want to acknowledge as well, in fact, we've got someone in the chat here, Melissa, who I think has been following you since you yourself were on Vine and Periscope as well, getting a mention.
Cool. Nice.
And I think this might be quite an interesting final question, really, because as you say, Vine did go bust. Do you have anything to say to any creators out there that might be concerned that they might be building up a profile on a particular channel that they don't own, that could be retired, that could disappear? It certainly feels like a lot of the storytelling disciplines do transfer from one platform to the next, perhaps. These might be transferable skills if we've honed that storytelling craft.
Definitely. I mean, that's a
but can I ask your own thoughts? Yeah.
You know what? I think that's a question that needs to be asked a lot more often. I think you're the first person to ask that in a very long time. And you know what? That's true, because a lot of people, especially a lot of content creators, like to put all their eggs in one basket and find one platform as the be all or end all. Now, it's very easy to do. And in order to do well on any social media platform, you need consistency. You need to be posting on or creating on a regular basis to make anything work. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how do I produce stuff on a regular basis but not put my eggs in one basket? And the best question to that is to always diversify what you produce. And that's where the sustainability element comes into it, which is repurposing your content on different platforms. I know a lot of content creators. So for example, I've been live streaming for 6 years now, and I knew from the start that live streaming for me was just a tool to amplify my work. That's it. It was always the case.
Okay.
I did very well through live streaming. One of the first of 10 to become a Twitter live ambassador, flew all over the world. Brilliant. I still diversified my content. I still posted stuff on a regular basis on Instagram, on Twitter. However, there were many who just did one platform. Now, Periscope, for example, closed down officially in March this year after 6 years. Now, 6 years is a great run, but there were creators who had hundreds of thousands, 500,000 followers who didn't do any content on any other platform.
Wow.
So their major source of income, because you could get tips, was gone.
Yeah.
Overnight. So it was a huge learning curve from Vine creators, because I remember I was in Anaheim in LA in 2016 for VidCon. I was sat in an American diner at probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, having pancakes and milkshakes. Typical. I'm being stereotypical, aren't I? But it was true. And I was surrounded by Vine creators, people who've got millions and millions of followers and revines. And at that moment, they were talking to me as if Vine was going to be around for 10 years. But when I got back home 2 weeks later, it was gone. And so there was then they rushed to another platform like YouTube, and then they went to TikTok. So my biggest advice is, yes, produce content on a regular basis if you can, but think about, okay, I've produced this content for TikTok, for example. How can I reshare this video on Instagram with a completely new caption, respecting the uniqueness of that platform? How can I share it to Facebook, respecting the type of hashtags or the type of language for that audience? How can I post it on YouTube? And again, the exact same thing. Do a bit of research in terms of what makes each platform unique and the type of audience, age group that is on that platform, and you will start to do really, really well with that one video.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Amrit. I really appreciate that. That's brilliant. Fab. Well, look,
awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. A really huge thanks, Amrit. That's really appreciated. A lot of really, really practical advice. And again, yeah, I think helping to, building those assurances as well. If we're going to put these time and energies into creating these pieces, that's really, really great to know, to really think about where else those materials can go. All right, well, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a brief screen break now. We're going to pop up a break slide. This is going to last for 10 minutes. So by all means, have a wee comfort break, grab yourselves a cup of tea or whatever you want to do. And we'll be back at 11:45, where we're going to hear from Mark Stedman, specifically about audio, and we're going to hear from Angie Mcfarlane, again, about those connections with audiences and a little bit more about the kind of audience perspective on those different platforms. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you back here at 11:45. Thank you. There we go. Okay, everyone. I'll give you all a minute. If anyone is rushing back from a kettle with a hot mug of coffee, please don't spill. Take your time. Just get everyone, give you all a minute. And then we'll restart. I can also catch my breath from running back up the stairs from the kettle too. Thank you very much. So again, yeah, just to recap, we've heard some fantastic practical tips, insights, and inspiration from Amrit in the first half of today for some of the approaches that we can take to content, some of the ideas we might want to explore, and again, some really practical things to look at in terms of making those pieces, producing those pieces, being creative. We're now going to hear from our second speaker, Mark Stedman. Mark produces and edits personality-led podcasts for entrepreneurs and authors and builds podcast tech for everyone. We've asked Mark to talk to us today specifically, as I say, about audio content and to share his insight into the unique challenges and opportunities, and also around recurring content as well, I think. Welcome, Mark. If I could please invite you to describe yourself, introduce yourself, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Hello. My name is Mark. I am in my late 30s. I identify as male. I'm white and I have a distinctly unepic greying beard and short brown hair. I run a company called Origin, where I make podcasts and I help other people make them. That's sort of how I used to describe myself. But recently I've realized that actually what I do more of is help create a space for people to feel safe to create in, so that they feel creatively confident and supported in what they're making. The things I'm going to talk about are perhaps less related to process and platforms and more related to feelings, I guess. As a bit of background, I'm visually impaired. I'm reading from massive notes on this screen that I'm where the webcam is perched on top of, because it saves me having to look away to another screen, and so hopefully I can sort of be more present. But my identity as a disabled person, as someone with a visual impairment, it's something that is sort of personal to me, and it doesn't much enter into my work. And I think that's sometimes a shame. I carry obviously the empathy of a disabled person with me, but it doesn't always enter into my work. And I think, I don't know, I wanted to make that point because I think that often the identity and the work we do for disabled people can meet, and I think there's no problem with that. But yeah, so sometimes I think a medium, sometimes we just get excited about the idea of working in a particular medium, whether that's voice or video. So my medium tends to be audio, and I'm excited about working in audio. I grew up listening to audiobooks as a kid, and finding new things from the library, and I found my favorite kids book because it was narrated by Andy Crane, who people over in their 30s and over might remember from a British children's TV. And so I really got into what the voice can do, and the idea of intimacy in audio has become something of a cliche. Lately, people in podcasting talk about the intimacy with sort of rolling eyes, but it is genuinely the way I talk about it is the ability for a message to go from the ears to the brain to the heart, because of the intimacy that is generated with this closed loop that we have between you and the person that you're speaking with. I help people figure out sometimes whether, if they're excited by the medium of audio, for example, whether that is something that is right for them. And so there are kinds of questions that I help guide people through when they're figuring out. Often there's this thing of, I'd like a podcast, I'd like to have one, but I don't really know what it should be about, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and that kind of thing. And so I try and help people ask questions like, who would benefit from spending time with you? Just who, I was looking at the time there, who would you want to spend time with, and who would have a good time with you? Who do you want to speak to? How many people do you want to speak to? Thinking in terms of orders of magnitude. Is it 10 people? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? And you'd be surprised at the breadth of answers that people give to that question, I think. Are you the star of the show, or are you the star's biggest influence? Are you behind the scenes helping make the thing happen, helping shine a light on a guest? Or are you the person who's bringing the knowledge, bringing the, I will say bringing the funk? Is it something that is ephemeral? Is your work ephemeral, or should it be archived in an internet museum? So are you creating something that is not necessarily disposable, but where you talk about something and then a week or 2 weeks later, you're talking about the next thing? Or are you building a library of work that internet archaeologists might then stumble upon at some point? And I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And then there are, so if we look at the kinds of forms of audio content that you can create, you've got things like starting with a blog post. This can be one of the best ways to get into the space, actually, if you're interested in audio, but you're not entirely sure how to get in. And there are all sorts of reasons why this is a more accessible way to get in. You can go starting with the written word, so starting with a blog post or a newsletter article, and then moving that into a podcast. So just sitting down with a microphone like the one I'm recording on now, which I can share details of in the chat. You can take your words and just record those. You can do a guest interview where you sit down with a new guest, or you can have a panel sort of discussion where maybe you have a few people and you're having a discussion there, or if we think of like a Radio 4 panel show, that kind of format. You've got the diary format, which is maybe a little bit more like the blog format, but more, you're speaking more off the cuff, and maybe you've got a few notes, but it's really about journaling and telling your particular story. That can be great if you're telling the story of making making a piece of art or building a business. You've also got there's a newer format that started to come up over the last couple of years, which is a sort of briefing, which is a short briefing. To the right of me here, there is a smart speaker. I won't give it the name because I don't want to trigger anybody else's, but that smart speaker has the ability to create flash briefings, which are short little bits of audio. And those can be really fun ways of delivering audio. Once you've kind of picked your format, the next thing to think about is the personality that you bring and finding your personality. And I think one of the pieces of advice that I give people is don't try to be yourself, which might sound counterintuitive, but it's the trying that is the tricky bit. I think the best thing to do is just turn up, show up to the microphone and just talk. Don't try to be yourself, because then you start getting into your own head about, do I really speak like that? That's a weird way to say the word grass. Like, I don't normally say the word grass like that. Why am I speaking in this tone? Whereas the advice I tend to give people is to imagine that you're on stage, or like an environment like this, where there is an audience, but you're not talking to the audience. You're talking to one person who's asking you the questions. So I might imagine that I'm sat here across from Rob, and Rob is asking me some questions, and we're just having a conversation, and we have the listeners in the audience that are then listening to that conversation. It helps you imagine who you're speaking to, but also help foster that sense of intimacy that I talked about. I think informality is the best way to be. Honesty, authenticity, rather than trying to bring a version of yourself, unless that's part of your performance, then I think bringing your honest self to the microphone is the best thing you can do to find your personality. And then quickly, some sort of process kind of stuff as we're in the last minute here is there is no major platform with audio. There are places where you can host it, and there are places where you can go and host it for free. But unlike YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and places like that, there is no central place where audio happens. SoundCloud tried that for a while, but it didn't catch on for a number of reasons. So it is decentralized in that there is no one sort of platform that is ruling them all, if you know what I mean. That creates wonderful opportunities for you to be able to own your content. Amrit talked about what happened when the likes of Vine disappeared. That's not a problem that you necessarily have. What you do have is what we call the discoverability problem. And that is a topic for another discussion, I think, is you become more responsible for spreading your message, and that can become a particular challenge. Other challenges that I try and help people with are things like the weekly grind and how we avoid things feeling too repetitious. And the last thing I'll say very quickly is it's important to recognize that this stuff can be lonely. If you're producing content and you're speaking to an audience that you don't necessarily get to interact with, then this can feel lonely. And so finding communities, this is across the board, not just with audio. Finding communities that you can work with, finding someone to help you along the process, even just to be able to chat things through with, it can be so so helpful, because it can keep you from feeling like you're speaking into the void, which is a really common feeling that people have, especially in podcasting, because you don't get that kind of immediate feedback because there isn't a comment section. You don't get that immediate feedback from people, and so that can feel that can get a little bit tiring after a while. And so it's important to acknowledge that and join communities of people, not necessarily just for help with process and with tech, but also with taking on some of that emotional stuff and helping you feel a lot better about the work that you're doing. And with that, I think I will hand it back over to Rob.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was fantastic, really fantastic. Yeah, and some fantastic things to consider. I love there what you talked about, the loneliness of the long distance podcaster. I particularly enjoyed it as well. I've got a couple of questions from this side, and yeah, lots of notes that I was writing down as you went through. That was fantastic. I suppose let's start with that idea of that loneliness, if that's okay. You talked about, and I know this has been noted, that yeah, a lot of, particularly with podcasting, there isn't that comment section. There isn't that opportunity for people to talk to one another beyond them maybe posting a review or giving you a star rating or something. Due to the lack of that comment section, how important do you feel that it is to be active on other sites in parallel?
Paramount, I think. It is. And I think it is. Twitter especially has a diverse community of podcasters, but there is a space within what we might call podcast Twitter that is really warm. There is Amrit, I'm sure will know the term, especially from the likes of Instagram, is people can be thirsty, which means that they are looking for quick ways to get promotion and get more likes and views and subscribers, and that can lead to looking for shortcuts. And there is that in Twitter, but there are also people to follow. Their names are very difficult to say out loud, so I can put their details in the chat. There are a couple of wonderful people to follow in that space who are really supportive and post really insightful things to help counteract some of that stuff. to sort of work against some of the algorithmic chasing kind of stuff, and to foster more of a supportive community, because there is that within Twitter. Also Facebook groups, there are some wonderful Facebook groups. The Podcasters Support Group is a long running one and a really warm and helpful space. So being active there, but also finding the communities of interest that your podcast is addressing. That's really, really crucial. Not just talking to other podcasters, but talking to the people that actually are your targeted audience, finding ways to communicate with them and let them know you've got something to say, not just tweeting out, here's a new episode, here's a link, because that often doesn't convert. But having those conversations, answering people's questions, and then building that trust, which is a big key thing, is building the trust so that then someone goes, oh, okay, they've been really helpful. What is it that they do? And they go and check out your podcast, and then they become someone who loves it and wants to spread the word.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really interesting as well when you describe really thinking about who it is that you're talking to. And again, if it's just you in a home studio setup, speaking into the wall or the space or whatever it might be, that idea of really visualizing who it is that you're talking to, I think is fantastically helpful. I know that a lot of the teams and the organizations that the space works with, that we as an organization, the space works with, they feel that because you're publishing something online, you're automatically speaking to the global population. You know, you're speaking to everyone that has an internet connection or a data package on their phone, you know. Whereas in actual fact, communities, and again, it was great that you used that word, are often built around specific passions or regional connections or brand loyalty or something like that. You know, that Venn diagram has kicked in at that point. I mean, do you mind if I ask you just to expand upon that, including why you ask that question to the people that you work with in terms of who it is they think they're talking to and on what scale?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I run people through at an early stage is something that I call the listener story. And it's something that comes from it's something that comes from the world of software development, where you're trying to, when you have a feature or a bug that you're fixing, it's a way of expressing what the thing is that you want to solve, but also how the person that you're solving it for benefits as a result. And so what is often missed in podcasting especially, but perhaps in other media as well, I think podcasting suffers from this more because there is such a low barrier to entry. It's very easy to create something. Is we often don't think, we can sometimes think about the audience, and we think, like you were saying, it's anyone with an internet connection, or it's anyone who likes podcasts, or anyone who likes Marvel or DC comics. And you end up with this huge group of people that you have no real way of being able to tap into because you're not really identifying with them. And so creating a listener story helps you figure out who your show is for and how the listener benefits as a result of listening. So what do they actually get out of your show? And that can be a little bit ego breaking for some people because they want to create a couple of people having banter, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with a show like that. But if you're looking for growth, if you're looking to spread your message to more people, not being clear on that niche, on who you serve and how you're helping them, that can make life more difficult. So it always starts with who.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. Thanks so much, Mark. I've got 2 more questions with and I'll let Angie know we're likely to run over a little bit, but we'll get that time back at the end. But
I'll try and keep my answers shorter. Sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry, it's absolutely fine. Because this is fantastic, really insightful. I was going to say, just from the chat, we've got a couple of notes. First of all, I saw Amrit as well has posted an article about maintaining presences on other sites as well, elevating your podcast presence on Twitter, which she says, absolutely relates to what you've been saying there as well. And we've also had a question from Melissa who has said, has phrased this fantastically. She said, is it possible to ask about any kind of startup tech or entry-level tech and equipment? And she said, without triggering smart speakers, is there any, if someone is going to start doing this, what sort of things they need to consider? And I suppose it's useful to consider this. For example, when people talk about video, we often say your tripod is more important to you than your lens, you know, in terms of making it look slick and professional. Is there an equivalent in audio that people should be looking out for?
There is, and it's funny you say that, because I was just thinking, I can recommend this microphone to you, which is a USB microphone, but it also has an input for if you wanted to plug it into a mixer. Okay. And there are lots of microphones that you can buy that will sound okay at various different budgets. But actually, to the tripod analogy, the best thing you can do is get really close. And then it's not about the quality of the mic. It's actually, that's how we create that intimacy. I know that looks weird. Sorry.
No, not at all.
But it's how you create that intimacy, because you're shortening the distance between you and the person you're speaking to. So it's actually, yes, I will happily put a mic recommendation. It's a great starter mic. It costs about £90, I think. And I think you can get a kit that comes with headphones. That is all you need: a quiet space, preferably one where you've closed the curtains and you haven't got a lot of hard surfaces that your audio is bouncing off of. Even if you have, the closer you get, nice and close with, so on top of this microphone is a pop filter, which gets rid of the popping P sounds that we can hear sometimes, that we call plosives. Putting that on the microphone, getting really close, that is actually the best thing that you can do.
That's amazing. That's amazing advice. Thank you very much, Mark. And then my very final question is this one that was shared in advance, which was, how can you make recurring content or messages feel less repetitive?
That is a great question. And I think I've struggled with answering that, because recurring content, the podcast itself, what that we can get into, a thing that I've started to call the grind, which is the prepare, produce, and promote cycle. We're used to producing podcasts on a weekly or fortnightly basis, and you can get into almost a hypnotic state of just prep the next episode, now edit it, now release it, post it to Twitter, post it to Facebook, update the newsletter, now on to the next one, and it just rolls on. And so I think there are processes that you can put in place to help make that a little less laborious. It's about finding the bits that bring you joy and trying to remove or delegate the tasks that zap your energy, because most podcasts fail at an early stage. They go away at around episode 7 because people start to get into that grind. They're not seeing the growth that they want. That takes longer. And they end up with this process that doesn't enrich them and actually zaps their energy. And so try and look at what the aspects of your pipeline that you love doing, and then see if you can get help with the aspects that you don't like doing. Very quick example is I have a show about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I put a lot of time into editing it, and then once I've edited it, I'm kind of tired, and I need someone else to help with getting the word out, telling listeners, putting it on Twitter. And so I have one of my co-hosts helps with that process, because that's something that zaps my energy. And so that is a way to help make that stuff more sustainable. I don't know if that was the kind of answer to the question that was helpful, but that's my best stab.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm just going to check as well, because I noticed Max furiously signing the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I just want to check. Are you okay at that end, Max? Did you get all of that? All good? Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. And no, don't apologize at all. Don't apologize at all. Huge thanks, Mark. That was genuinely fantastic. Really, really, really insightful. So huge thanks. And again, lots of positive comments in the chat as well. So thank you.
A real pleasure. Thank you, Rob. This has been a lot of fun.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, fantastic. We're now able to move on to our third and final speaker. So with huge thanks and huge thanks for your patience as well, Angie. I just wanted to introduce Angie Mcfarland. So Angie is a digital marketing specialist. She helps brands, teams, organizations, individuals with fantastic campaign-driven content, ensuring that it reaches the audience that it deserves, and also generates the response that's needed for it as well, making sure that it's really useful. We've asked Angie to come and talk a little bit about audiences, which I know is a huge topic. So without further ado, if it's all right, Angie, I'll pass straight over to you to introduce yourself, describe yourselves, and yeah, talk to us about that. Thank you very much, Angie.
You're welcome. Thanks, Rob. Hello, everyone. I'm Angie Mcfarlane. I'm a woman in my mid-40s. I'm white with mid-blonde, mid-length hair, and I'm wearing a pink jumper. As Rob said, I'm a digital marketing specialist and mentor working with the space for several years now. I also run my own agency called Let's Talk, and my focus is on helping organisations to find their audiences and develop effective marketing and content strategies around those. I just wanted to say, actually, Mark and Amrit have been great at sharing some great ideas for content and tools that you can use. And I'm sure that if you use their advice when you're making your short form content, you'll definitely have people wanting to see it. But the thing is, you know, how do you find those audiences, first of all? Well, basically, you need to work out who that target audience is. If resources are tight, which is a common theme with a lot of organisations that I work with, the main thing you want to do is, sorry, hang on a minute. The main thing you want to do is focus on the one or two platforms that you know are going to work really well for you, rather than try and cover all the platforms and spread yourself too thinly at the start. So what I want to try and do with you to start with is help you find where the audiences are and what the platforms might be that would be best for you to focus on initially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share my screen because I have a few stats and figures that I'd like to share with you, and I'll talk you through those today. Now, sorry, I just need to check. Can everyone see those slides? Someone could pop in the chat and let me know.
I don't think we can quite yet. I don't think.
Right, okay. Let me just have a look at the sharing screen. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be letting me share the screen.
Okay, I think, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay. So, can we now do this? So, we can sort of see part of the screen, can't we? There we go. Okay, so the slide in front of you shows a table of the weekly usage of social media, which has been taken from the Global Web Index's 2021 report on social media trends. So this is a very recent report that just came out a few weeks ago. The table shows the percentage of users in all age groups aged between 16 right through to 64, and it's broken down into their generational groups. So Gen Z, 16 to 23-year-olds, millennials, Generation X, and boomers. And it shows their weekly usage of social media platforms. The social media platforms that they've got listed here include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Reddit, and Tumblr. What this table simply shows us on a first glance is that Facebook is still by far the most popular platform across all audience groups. The only exception being Generation Z, who are the only age group who actually prefer Instagram. So if we could have the next slide, please, Risha. Thank you. If you want to put your audience's primary interests and emotional needs at the heart of your social media campaigns, you need to really work out what it is that drives them when they're using social media. And some interesting stats that came out of that Global Web Index report was on what the top drivers were when people came to using social media. So for all groups, at least 50% of all social media users use it primarily to keep in touch and chat with their friends and loved ones. Around 37% use their social media to find funny, inspiring, entertaining content, or just generally see what's happening around the world. 30% want to see what's trending, what's being talked about, what the trends are, and actually participate in those trends. And 27% use it to follow and find information about their favourite products and brands. So breaking down those stats in a little more detail, it's really interesting that of all those social medias that use it to keep in touch with and chat with their loved ones and friends, it's most popular with Generation X and the 50 plus boomers age group. And that is primarily what they do use social media for. But for social channels favoured by Generation Z, such as Instagram and TikTok, finding fun and entertaining content and participating in posting and sharing photos, videos are really their top reasons for logging on. Interestingly, Generation Z, while they consume the most content overall, can often be passive consumers of social content. At least 44% of them admit to just using it to fill their spare time. But you know, while they are sitting there scrolling away, they are looking and seeking out trends that will catch their eye, something that they can participate in, whether that's on Instagram or TikTok. And they're also very much more likely than anyone else to use Instagram or TikTok to follow their favorite influencers and brands and organizations that they're interested in. Keeping up to date with news and world information is also very important to most users of all the channels. But Twitter still dominates as the main channel for topical events and news. And also, as kind of Mark has touched upon earlier, it's very much a diverse audience on Twitter, and a lot of people do engage much more around podcasts and more lengthy content and literary content and things like that. So if that's an area that we're in, it's definitely one of the channels that you should focus on. We'll go on to the next slide. We're just going to look at just a few of the ways once you've established what your audience, who your audience is and where they are, and the types of content that they're engaging with, is how you can sort of make content to appeal to those audiences. Being audience focused means sort of putting your audience's primary interests and emotional needs at the heart of your social media campaigns. Mark's comment about listener profiles was really interesting, because when I work with people, we always look at audience personas and profiles first of all, because we want to get in our audience's shoes and find out what it is that's really driving them, what's their interests. I'd call them pen profiles, but like I say, listener profiles, if you're doing audio, would make perfect sense to do that as well. If you really get to know who they are and have a think about what it is that's driving them to become engaged with or be interested in your content initially, you can start to build a really strong community around your organization and create content that engages them and keep that momentum going. So we've established that most people like their fun to be their content to be lighthearted and fun, and that was common across most of the top 3 social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. People want content to be topical, and we talked about this earlier as well in the webinar, that paying attention to what's trending on social media and around the web is really important. But it is also really important to find the trends and topics that are really relevant to you before leveraging them to get attention for your content. Creating content that's going to inspire and drive participation is also really key. You want to get people to engage with you. If people engage with you, your content will become more discoverable. So you want people to tag, share, comment, whatever it is that you want them to do. You can create content to drive that engagement. You want to make content shareable as well. So obviously more people share it with their friends and loved ones and family and say, hey, look at this. This is something really funny I've seen. You know, we all do it. We know that's how people work on social media. So if it's something that's going to grab their attention and they're going to want to tell people about it, that's really good, and that's really successful strategy to follow if you have the content that can appeal, especially if your audience is Generation Z. That's the ones that are going to share and engage with content quite actively, even if they're possibly doing it in a passive way when they're sitting there just scrolling and watching their 2 screens. You want to, I mean, this has come up a lot, being authentic, unfiltered, honest in your communications. It's really important that you try to be as authentic and unfiltered as possible in your content that you put out there. You really don't want to look like you're trying to be someone else or trying to appeal to a specific audience and make it look like you're trying. Actually being honest with your content and your approach is going to be much more effective strategy. As Amrit said earlier, one of the things that's really useful and should be in your content mix is repurposing and reusing old content. I always advise people I work with to make sure you create a library of really good, solid, evergreen content. Evergreen content is the kind of content that just doesn't really go out of date. And can always be relevant to your audience, whether that's a how-to guide, a blog topic, or a story, a classic story or tale, or a human interest story. If it's going to be something that's always going to appeal to people on a relevant basis, then really should try and get a bank of content like that together. It makes your approach really sustainable, and you know, if people are, there's always going to be new audiences that have missed it first time round, so definitely always add that to your content mix. And the next slide, so this is basically a slide of a Google Excel spreadsheet. And maintaining a social media planner or schedule is essential in keeping yourself organized and planning ahead, managing and batching your content so you can keep and manage a sustainable content strategy and marketing strategy. It will give you space, if you've got that plan, to research trends, plan new ideas for later, and just have an idea of what you're going to do. If there are seasonal events and trends that are coming up, you can include those in your schedule as well. There are lots of social tools and schedulers around, like Hootsuite, Later, and Buffer, and you can use these. Most people use them for scheduling posts, and most do have free versions. Although you will need to pay for some of the premium features like calendars and certain planners or special schedules if you want to schedule more than 1 or 2 tweets in advance. But I don't think you can beat a simple Google or Excel spreadsheet, and having something that everyone can share in your organization and contribute to, so they know what's coming up. Things I'd recommend keeping in your schedule or your planner would be the date and time your posts are going to be going out, the social channels where those posts are going to be published. Your post copy or draft post copy is useful to have. You can always tweak and edit it later when you're actually putting it into the planner, into the channel, sorry. But it's always useful to have an idea about what you're going to say. You're probably going to want to keep a list of any creative assets you want to attach to that too, so you know if you're a creative person or if you've got someone working with you to create your content, such as photos and videos, they know what needs to be produced and what needs to be attached. Social media handles of any partners and hashtags to be included in the posts are also handy to have in that scheduler. So if you've done some research on those trends and people that you can connect with, then you can include those in your post automatically. And sometimes any other additional or relevant information is quite good to keep in that planner, such as, is this an Instagram post, or is it a story, or is it real? Just little details like that just helps you to be proactive with your campaigns and makes them much more manageable and sustainable as you go on. So once you've got your plan together, there are a few ways that you can make your content more discoverable. And on the next slide, we've got a list of things that you can try. And these are things that have come up quite a lot earlier on. So you can be on trend is something that we've talked about quite a lot. If you pay attention to what's trending on social media and around the web, you'll be able to find some trends and topics that are relevant to you to get some attention. You can use those hashtags. So including relevant hashtags can help you to cast a wider net to your audience and find new people and have a broader reach. And it helps new people to discover you too. We've talked about this earlier, and Amrit has. It is quite important to include hashtags in your posts. If you're doing Instagram, then the ideal is between 12 to 30 hashtags per post. If you're on Twitter, it might be just 2 or 3. There's a really great blog post by Gary Vaynerchuk who shares some tips on using hashtags across all the different social platforms, and I'll share that in the chat, so you can all have a look for yourselves. But it's really important, and I'll just kind of reinforce what Amrit and Mark have said before, is to keep those hashtags really relevant. You do want to spread that net wider, but you also want to make sure that you catch the right people with that net. Using high quality videos and images is really important. Channels like TikTok and Instagram really do prioritize the quality of content above anything else. So always make sure that you do put out the content that you're really, really happy with, that's the best that you can make. And there's, you don't have to be a Photoshop wizard or pro to make your images stand out. You can just make sure that you've got a good iPhone with a good quality, high quality camera that can take pictures. And if you want to use any professional graphics, you can use simple web-based tools like Canva or Adobe Spark to make those graphics for your campaigns. If you're promoting a podcast or audio and you produce something, it's always really worth creating a visual asset to go with that. Your audio clips that you can put across your social media platforms. Just make sure that you include a really good, relatable quote or topic to pique that interest and draw your audience in. And again, there's some really good free apps like Headliner online, which make it really simple to create some eye-catching clips and videos for your audio. We talked about in some level about engaging with followers and comments and influencers. And while you want obviously your followers and influencers to comment on your content, you should be also engaging with them. I see a lot of people do their social media channels and they just post and they don't respond to or even acknowledge some of the comments that come up on their posts. And I really encourage people to do that, even if it's just a like or a thank you to a comment that they've made. If you show that you're watching and listening to your audiences and engaging with your audiences, they're more likely to come back and share and participate in the content that you're putting out. Another really good way of getting more engagement is posting swipeable carousel style posts with multiple images. Those do tend to boost engagement. So if you've got a highly visual medium that you wanting to push on Instagram or on Facebook, then extra images definitely will help you boost that engagement on those posts. Sharing posts from your audience is also really important. You know, you can share them across Instagram stories or sharing them, retweeting them on Twitter or onto your Facebook page. But when people say something nice about you or share something that they've made while working with you, it's really nice to share that across across your channels, and they'll come back to you again if you're sharing that content. And I think engagement, I think people sort of sometimes forget that engagement isn't just about likes and comments. It's always also really important to share content that people also want to share or save. Content such as important information or advice or tips or inspiring quotes. There's something that people are going to want to save and return to or look back at later. So if you have that kind of content, that's also really good content to get up there on your social channels. One way of really helping to boost the discoverability of your content is finding partners and influencers who can share it for you. These may be people you work with, artists that you're working with, brand partners, co-workers, even ambassadors, patrons, people in the media that you might have connections with. You don't have to pay influencers to share your content. There will be people within your networks and in your fan base and in your groups that will have good followers and good engagement, and getting them on side and helping you with your campaigns is really, really important. And don't forget to tag them if you're involved with them, and give them a mention again in your posts. That recognition always helps to get engagement and discoverability across other accounts. And I'll say the last two may seem obvious, but cross-promoting things on your other channels is essential. Even if you're focusing just for now on Instagram, or you want to keep up with Facebook constantly, it's still important to keep those other channels around, even if you haven't got the resources to do a lot on them. It's key to keeping as broad a base as possible. It's like we've touched upon earlier on. You could put all your eggs into one basket only for them to find that they pull that social media platform, or it goes down, or it changes, or it doesn't exist anymore, and where do you put your content then? So keep your options open. And also, finally, post when your audiences are online. You'll find a lot of people will post when it's convenient for them, when it's a quiet time in the morning or an easy time of day because you've got the time to do it. And actually planning and checking your insights to know when people are online and when they're most likely to engage with you is really important, and a really good thing to consider before you start posting your content. So just to summarize, what how do you know what works? What is it that you need to do? I get asked that a lot. We can say, well, I could do all these things, but what is it that really works? And my recommendation is always just to look at other organizations, the ones that you aspire to, the ones that are doing things well, and check their posts. What is getting the most comments, what seems to be getting the most engagement, the most views. Are there any patterns? And can you use that insight to feed that back into creating your own posts? And you can look for things like, what's the tone of voice that resonates best with your audience? Is there a visual style or format that works better than others, that outperforms other formats? And can you add captions? We talked about this earlier in the webinar, but adding captions that prompt a response or tease or pique someone's interest with a question or a statement, these can hook for you as early on, and it compels people to react or respond. So they're all my tips. Has anyone got any questions?
That was brilliant, Angie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm conscious that we've gone over time, but there was so much insight there, so much content there. Funnily enough, the pre-prepared questions that I had, you've answered both of them within that copy. So that's absolutely fantastic. I'm conscious we've gone a wee bit over time, so I'm not gonna dwell on this for too long, but I really just wanted to say thank you for sharing that. That was absolutely fantastic. And I think it was really notable how reassuring it was that even when we approach this from the strategic side, rather than necessarily the artistic or creative side, those approaches, it really feels familiar. A lot of it is still about persona or authenticity or community, or, what are the things that our audience are seeking in those places? What is the culture of the platforms that we're using? How can we fit all that together? It was really wonderful to see. Also, personally, it was great to see that a content plan, when done formally in that way, it can actually be something that generates a massive amount of relief and reassurance, rather than it feeling like a huge knotty document that we've got to wrestle with, something intimidating. It's actually quite a relief to see how simple and straightforward it can be, just as a checklist of content. So that was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. We've had one question that Lucy Barker's asked in the chat, which I want to touch upon. And I think actually it's a question that touches upon what a few people have said. So Lucy says, I've been diagnosed with autism in addition to dyspraxia and other health issues during lockdown, and have found my difficulty sharing my practice online. This has become significant in recent months. I'm working with a support worker for my self-employed business as an artist, and they're able to do some of the online stuff for me, which is great. And I'm interested in how we can do this in a somewhat transparent way to recognize the multi-pronged approach to workarounds with disability. Do you have any tips on how to maintain authenticity and personal safety when making steps back into sharing things online? And I think actually the answer to this comes from what a number of people have said. Mark earlier on mentioned that it is okay for you to have a performative persona online. It's okay if the version of you that is online isn't necessarily every aspect of your personality. Some things can remain personal, can remain just for you. And it might be about, what is our online persona? And is it authentic for the platforms that we're using? Your persona might be different on Instagram as it is on LinkedIn. Your persona might be different on Byte as it is on YouTube. It's that authenticity of the platform that you're working in, rather than you necessarily feeling you have to offer up everything of yourself. We don't really have much more time, but I really hope that's useful. I really hope that we've answered everyone's questions. We are going to put, again, I know we're running over, but we are going to put a little evaluation form into the chat. If I could ask you just to give us any feedback you can. It's a SurveyMonkey link, which Rish has just put into the chat there. So if you can do that, it really helps us. That feedback really helps us get secure support and funding to run more of these webinars as well. You'll also be redirected to the form when the webinar ends as well. But other than that, I just want to say a huge thanks again to everyone. A huge thanks to Angie for sharing so much fantastic information that was really informative. A huge thanks to Mark Stedman as well for talking to us about audio. A huge thanks to Amrit Singh too for chatting to us about his insights around different platforms as well. I want to give a huge thanks to everyone who has contributed to the day as well. A huge thanks to our BSL interpreters. I really appreciated it. Again, I know I'm going over, but huge thanks to them. And again, a huge thanks to Claire, who's been doing our captions, and Roberto, who's been doing his work as well. And a huge thanks as well to everyone live tweeting the event too. I really appreciate it. Apologies if I've missed anyone, but other than that, a huge thanks to all of you who have attended and who have taken part. I really hope you've enjoyed it and you found it useful and informative. Best of luck, everyone. I will stop there. Thank you. Bye-bye.